We are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland. I'm one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. With me on this special Father's Day episode, we're diving into the Bad Batch, who, again, are great examples of being good dads in Star Wars, which is a super low bar. And we're going to discuss the many legal issues in Reunion. Joining me tonight is, in alphabetical order, is Steve Chu, Thomas Harper, and for the first time, Christina Solis from Texas. And we're going to have a rip-roaring good time discussing the many issues of having fights on surplus ships and dueling and exposing children to live ordnance, all those fun topics. Gentlemen, let's get things out of the way first. Both of you are dads. I am not. So did you have a good Father's Day?
Steve, go ahead.
I did. Thank you. It was pretty low key, just some family time, did some errands, had some food, binge watched a new show. We started watching Manifest. We're several years behind, but it's been fun. And helped my younger one build some Legos, helped my older one with some Minecraft, and took a little walk. Pretty low key, the kind of the way I like it. How about you, Thomas?
I feel like in the context of Star Wars, you're not a good dad until you end up on a funeral pyre. So I've got some work to do. But no, I am wiped out. I'm exhausted. We had a joint birthday party for our girls yesterday, and they're now 1 and 3, and so you can imagine the chaos. It was the first time our family's gotten together since pre-pandemic 2019. So getting to talk Star Wars is like the lowest key point of my weekend, which is a good thing.
So here's the dad test from Star Wars. Have either of you looked at one of your children and said, "Don't make me destroy you"?
I'd be lying if I said I haven't thought that. And we did have, this isn't a moment of like Sith rage, but we had a piñata and it started raining outside. So our whole plan to do this princess piñata kind of went sideways. And so we were going to do it inside, and I rigged it up to the end of a broom, and I was just going to hold it out. And my wife had gotten a baseball bat out, and I was like, "You're going to let these kids swing a baseball bat, A, around me, and B, indoors." And I was like, I have a better tool. So I went downstairs and I got Yoda's lightsaber and brought it up. And so we have some videos of the kids doing a princess piñata with a lit Yoda's lightsaber. So it's green. But
that's
anyhow,
awesome.
So that was the highlight.
I haven't had anything quite like that, Josh, but I will say that both my boys have light up lightsabers, like the FX lightsabers and Disney lightsabers. We have like 4 at home, and we enjoy like sparring or messing around. And I will say that my 12-year-old was much easier to defeat when he was 8 or 9, but he's starting to hold his own now, which is starting to worry me a little bit. Probably would have cut off my arm by now. So, hey, you want the student to surpass the master, right?
That's right.
I have my cousin Georgette, married my cousin Garrett, who's a doctor. And I asked her, about the Vader quote, and she just smiled and didn't say anything. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of parents go through that. If there's a tantrum that sounds louder than a jet engine. So that's good times. I'm glad you both had low-key Father's Day. Christina, since this is the first time we've interacted, did you participate in a Father's Day celebration today?
I did not. Well, I called my dad, but other than that, we don't have kids yet. So we were just my husband and I together, called our respective fathers and had a low-key day, which was perfectly fine. And didn't even do anything. No, we didn't really do anything today. That was.
I'll make you a good deal on 1 or 2. We can talk offline. Your very own Omega.
Yeah,
I have a 2-year-old. Well, she's 21 months old niece that that fills a lot of the Omega role currently because she's just beginning to verbalize and she has lots of questions. So it's and she's also apt to follow people into trouble. So
got to give her some explosives training. Speaking of this episode.
Oh yeah, she would love that.
Let's get into that because dads are known for teaching kids what they know. I learned to swear from my dad, like him being out front working on cars, and in frustration, he would you could tell he was frustrated. And then, as my mother told the story, I would look up and say the obscenity that I thought he was thinking. And she'd go like, "Yeah, that's good," and I would look up, "Damn it, mommy!" Yep. So, but yeah, dads do that. And in this, we have Wrecker going for Uncle of the Year, teaching the Omega about explosives, because diffusing an IED is a good skill set to have.
This is true.
I don't know how to do it.
Arithmetic and bomb disposal. It's right there. Even balance.
It could depend where you live. So, but there's a lot to unpack there on whether or not how reckless that is or responsible. And we'll start with the JAG who has daughters. Have you and Marissa discussed when to talk to your kids about IEDs?
Well, we're thinking 4 might be the right age for that. I feel like she knows her colors, but it's a little too risky at this point. You might get she just wants to pull all the wires, so the 1-year-old crawls in. But what stood out to me in this scene is Wrecker obviously has control over the situation. You think he's just he's got a couple screws loose enough to set her up with live ordnance, but he doesn't. He sets her up with a smoke bomb, but she has no idea. So it's really kind of terror inducing for her as he's just looming over her, making this countdown as she struggles to remember the thing that she just learned 5 minutes ago. And then he actually grabs her too. He grabs her and really sells the whole thing. This bomb that she failed to defuse is going to detonate and potentially hurt him. So yeah, my mind went to the question of intent there. Does her fear, which was real and sold and stoked by her own dad, does that count for something? Or does it not matter because the whole thing was rigged from the beginning? I don't know.
I definitely have mixed feelings. I get fire hot kid learn, but I don't agree with that style of mentorship. Christina, do you have your thoughts, please?
Well, I think that I would say throw the kid in the deep end of the pool in a different scenario, but it's certainly a style of teaching, and some people are responsive to that. And I think more than one child has. My husband reports that was how he learned to swim. So, but I worry that Echo might be a mandated reporter, and
this is true.
And probably had some sort of obligation to call the Galactic CPS about the emotional trauma that Wrecker was putting poor Omega through. Although at the same time, she seemed to be taking it in stride. As there didn't seem to be a lasting effect on her in terms of if she were to be interviewed by a CPS person, I don't think that she would report too much in the way of trauma. So
she's learned how to fire a laser bow in a bar. This has learned a lot. So
the case report, I'm sure, is really interesting.
And again, what we know about Star Wars, that might be okay. It's a dangerous galaxy with a never-ending war. So let's do this.
Yeah.
Steve, putting on your dad hat and Esquire, What was your reaction to live ordinance instruction?
So two thoughts here, Josh. First is that we've discussed this at some prior panels, but there is definitely a child endangerment issue here. And under the California Penal Code, that's section 273A, a person can be guilty of child endangerment if they willfully cause or permit any child to suffer injury, or if they willfully cause or permit the child to be placed in a situation where his or her person or health is endangered. So basically, either they're injured or you put them in a situation where they could be injured. And actual harm to the child is actually not required. I think that Recker certainly meets one or both of those elements there. So, if this were normal times, I think he would be in some trouble, certainly from CPS or from galactic law enforcement, assuming that there is, a parallel or, a similar analog for that kind of law in the world of Star Wars. Now, having said that, though, it's very clear that these are not normal times. These guys are on the run from many forces. They're being tracked by bounty hunters, by the New Galactic Empire, and Omega. They can make a very compelling case that they're protecting Omega and trying to save her from people who wish to do her harm. So she's going to have to live a life of danger, and they're training her to have the skills to take care of herself. So, is it child endangerment? Yeah, but I think Omega's entire life, from the first episode of the season onwards, has been one of child endangerment. So, I think there would be a pretty good necessity defense here.
Yeah, and the only thing I was going to add is that if just because smoke is the munition that expels when this thing goes off doesn't mean it's safe or that it's not dangerous. Smoke munitions can be incredibly dangerous. It's an incendiary device. It's just, it doesn't explode and shoot shrapnel everywhere. But still, these things get really hot. I will say that Recker took the care to get her clear of, not the blast radius, but the area, clear of the device. She wasn't near it when this thing was going to go off. So, he had enough sense to do that. But just because it's not the bomb that she thinks it is doesn't mean that there's not danger to her. And that's an interesting aspect of the penal code. So if it's not actual harm, theoretically could emotional harm count in there? So that sort of trauma. Yeah.
I think absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
I believe in California, the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In Texas, I believe it is too.
Yeah.
One thing that Recker said at the very beginning was that the reason he was teaching her is because that whole place had them all over the place. So it wasn't like It was sort of like a fun exercise for use future life skills. This was hey, you might run into one of these things eventually here right now, and you need to know this right now. So that might be also a defense on his part of, maybe it shouldn't have been a live ordinance, but it was a skill that he felt that she needed to know because of the situation that they were in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. If we're assigning familial roles here too, I think it's pretty clear by now. Hunter is the dad, and Recker is sort of the crazy, idiosyncratic uncle who will probably take her riding on the motorcycle and give her first beer. He's that guy, right? Tech and Echo, I'm not sure. Tech's probably going to be the one to give her first computer. Echo, goodness knows. I think he's still trying to figure it out. Yeah, right. So, she's got some interesting role models here, shall we say?
I agree with your summation. It is. I believe the phrase was uttered on the Sky Talkers about the dad batch, and that is accurate. And I do think. Yeah, and I do agree that Recker is the fun uncle, and that is always the operational goal, because I do fall into the uncle category. And you don't want to be Uncle Owen in the situation. You gotta, Recker's a good model. Which brings us to the shootout that we have after they realize they're being watched. And I'm impressed with the fact that the heroes, despite getting live fire, have their weapons on stun. And that was just a nice thing to see, that our guys don't just shoot anyone with a lethal round who's a threat to them, even if they are taking live fire. And I haven't noticed that in any of the other episodes, like with the slave traders. That was live fire, but that was deserved. These guys were, they were all stunned. Did you guys have any thoughts on that?
Your point's an interesting one, because I don't know the episode name, but several episodes ago, as they were leaving, was that Seleucami or Felucia with Cut? They're on the landing pad. Clones are chasing them, and Omega's under fire. She's under direct danger, and Hunter kills. Like, he kills several clones, and it's this the having a dichotomy like that, instead of the Bad Batch just always being, full throttle killing machines, I think makes it more impactful, because you go back and watch an episode like that, and it hit me then. I was like, oh man, he's killing people right in front of them, and he's killing fellow clones. That's a deep connection. But I think it's a very subtle but effective storytelling device that the folks that have sort of a keen eye are rewarded for noticing. But I think it also, they don't need any more heat on them than they already have. Their purpose is they don't need these folks dead. They've done nothing to them other than firing upon them. They need to stop that threat. They need to get off the planet, and they don't need any other heat by leaving a trail of bodies behind them. So I think tactically it made sense. It also made sense for the characters too, because somebody like Rex, when he's in the mix, is going to use force when he needs to, deadly force if necessary, but he's not a stone cold killer, and neither are the rest of them. And I think that's a really, really nice character development for them. But it also kind of impacts the legal side of things too, because they're in the process of committing what would be felonies on Earth, and you're going to be responsible for the crimes that are committed in the course of committing those felonies. And if felony murder is a thing, and it's a pretty serious crime, one of the most serious, and so you don't need that kind of heat on you when you're evading the Empire.
Speaking of felony murders, Christina, you raised that earlier in our pre-chat about the shootout that happens. What did you notice about the felony murder rule that needs to be addressed here?
Well, it appeared early. I mean, when the third member of the Scrappers Guild was shot, it appeared that he was launched into an abyss and killed. But later, I noticed that there were 3 bodies piled up, and they were waiting for them, or trying to get in and out before they woke up. So certainly, I would argue that the Scrappers Guild would have a tort claim, or it's obviously a battery or an assault claim in prosecution if there was anybody to prosecute at this. But I think that they probably dodged a felony murder if that person was still alive. It is possible that they just recovered the body just to make sure, or whatever. But it appeared to me that they had recovered it and joined him with his fellows.
Yeah,
tie him up and throw him in the pile.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sadistic if the other guys who were stunned woke up and they're next to the corpse of their buddy. So that would be not good. I do think it's, from a tactical standpoint, killing the Scrappers would eliminate witnesses. So I do think that they're putting themselves in jeopardy by letting them live. But I also think that's just a good quality, that these guys don't deserve to die, that they're like security guards doing their jobs. And like, that's not a reason for them to be killed.
Special guest star.
Yes.
That does. Christina raised a point that had not occurred to me, but in terms of the tort claim, I wonder to what extent the Kaminoans are still liable. This is a product's liability case. If you want to treat the clones as the Kaminoans do, property, these are things, products that they've put out into the market, still Kaminoan property at its core that they've leased, I suppose, to the Galactic Empire. But what sort of liability is there as these folks tear up the galaxy?
It's a massive class.
Yeah.
Stu, do you want to
That would be a lengthy analysis, because if you consider the clones products, then you got to see are they functioning as they should.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys are created to make war, so arguably the more destructive they are, the more they're true to their purpose.
Well, and these guys are defective.
And that would be the argument you could make.
Yeah.
But they were also kept in service, consciously by the people who made them. There would be a lengthy and very interesting products liability type of analysis there. Some real technicalities. We could certainly get into that, but I wanted to respond a little bit to what Josh said earlier, that, we can set aside the law for a moment, and just from a practical standpoint, if the Bad Batch kills, if they eliminate witnesses, tactically it can make some sense, but just thematically and story-wise, that's not what we want from our heroes, right? It's supposed to be harder. They take the harder path because it's right. We respect life. And if that means that it's more difficult to accomplish the mission, then so be it. We don't cut corners. At least that's what we expect from our heroes. And that's what we get here. We'll stun someone. Maybe we'll try to tie them up. We're not going to kill them if we can help it. And also, once people start killing, they cross that line. And, we see this storyline a lot, especially in Marvel Comics. Certain heroes will kill and some will not, like the Punisher will. So will Wolverine, but Daredevil will not. Spider-Man will not. It's a line they won't cross. It's a line in the sand. So it's one of those interesting character explorations for sure.
the fact Hunter looks like Rambo? He's not acting like Rambo. That's,
Hunter here.
yeah,
There we go.
somebody
Yeah.
from the Galaxy's Edge. So
What's also interesting is that there was no discussion about it. They all agreed it wasn't something that, they had to talk it through and decide whether or not they were going to kill them. I suspect if Crosshair had still been part of their group back in the old days, that might have been a discussion they had on a regular basis. Even without his chip being activated, he just seems like the type that would have been immediate, like get rid of the threat. So it's interesting that all four of them had no problem whatsoever with that, even though it's clear that there's some question about what they're doing and where they're going, at least on Echo's part.
and that's fair. That is a deeper discussion because it made me think of the number of former service members who are homeless, that in groups like Swords to Plowshares, and the very real issue of soldiers or warriors who have problems readjusting to civilian life, and whether it's the constant routine or whatever is the reason that they can't adapt and they end up homeless, it's that that mindset of we're soldiers, what else is there? So the fact that they've acknowledged that, I don't know if they'll explore it in any detail, but it's a real issue, and there are real groups that help former service members readjust to not end up on the streets.
Yeah, you see a little bit of that from Rex as he leaves. They're asking him what he's going to do next, and I don't remember what the actual quote was, but effectively he's like, there's a next mission. This is, he doesn't know. I think if you cut it to his core, he's fortunate to have a purpose in that context, that being survival and helping out others. But if you strip that away, I think you saw a little bit of that of him and the others in Rebels when they were found there on Selos, where they're just sort of out there fishing for jupas and not doing a whole lot. And the moment an opportunity to be part of a greater good comes up, they sort of jump on it.
What do you do with warriors when you're not at war?
Yeah, well, especially characters like or individuals like this that were literally bred for one thing, and it's combat, and then there's no use for them anymore.
Yeah, not everyone can put together a fishing team.
It's like that saying, soldiers don't really die; they just fade away, so to speak. And I'm actually very fascinated to see what happens with all the clone soldiers now that the war is essentially over. I'm leaning towards the sort of a darker storyline where the new empire just decides they don't need them and they do something horrible to the clones. That's just my total prediction. I don't know. Christina, you're nodding. Are you going to back me up on that?
I have a deep suspicion that the chips are going to be activated for something else. And it's not going to be good for anybody who has their chip still in place. That's my feeling about it, but it's just a feeling.
Like a kill switch.
Yeah, kill switch. Yeah.
But the Empire would need to raise a standing army before turning off the old one. And
yeah. So I suspect that they were in a little between stage, and whenever they feel like they have what they need, I suspect that the whoever Rex finds and is able to free will be pretty much all that's left.
Yeah. Mass euthanization. Rebels mentioned, with I don't remember which clone contacted the Empire after encountering the Rebel or the Kanan and Ezra and company, but the reaction on that Star Destroyer was some old clone, made the call. So maybe not all of them get deactivated violently.
Well, and Rex did say not everybody's chip worked.
Yeah.
So there are some out there that for whatever reason it didn't trigger. So.
If Brandon has a theory he'd like to offer, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what if the clones are just stormtroopers, just with lesser armor, and the generals of the Empire are basically just real people. That's why they're generals, because they're actually real people.
Well, I think you're right, because when we see Crosshair with his 3 detachments, they're referring to each other as CT and then a number. So it's clone trooper. So they clearly are going to be in service a while. So you're absolutely right on that. And they got accelerated aging, so maybe they'll just hit retirement age in a decade. And by then they'll have a fully trained standing army.
Yeah, I think that's a great thought. I think you're exactly right. I'd much rather see that than Christina. As great an idea as that is, it'd be horrendous. Especially if they show it on screen.
I just know darkness happens in these things. So.
Yeah,
very true.
I think Christina's onto something. It would be sad, but it would be fitting, I think.
And it also demonstrates that the Empire is a terrible, horrible thing.
Yeah. They've solidified that. I don't think we need to worry about that one.
Right.
What is an interesting next topic is how our heroes decide to become libertarian business men with going, we're on a Jedi cruiser. We have wonderful potential for being able to mine this thing for weapons or data that we can then sell. And they we have tech saying like, hey, the classified info is better than the weapons. And we also have Wrecker and Echo go on a big shopping spree for arms, so they could be arms dealers. And even Echo's like, we're soldiers. We're not arms dealers. I'd like to address these issues, and they're separate. Now, Thomas is our JAG officer, and the fact that we've had political issues in the not too distant past about people with classified information on personal servers. Do you want to tackle, the classified information coming off Star Destroyer?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I thought that this was the creators of the show kind of being smart about how things would actually be. That it's inexplicable to me that the Empire would be so careless as to just put these things in a salvage yard without wiping them. But then again, the Emperor had what he wanted. I don't think he cared all that much about battle plans from a war that he was playing both sides on. But what's interesting about the classified info to me, like the handling of classified information itself is a very serious business. Folks with security clearances, as we've seen in recent history, can face stiff penalties if they mishandle it. And that can be intentionally or negligently. So you can intentionally mishandle something by, say, stealing it, printing off classified information, or selling a classified computer, something like that. But you can also negligently mishandle it. And so somewhere in this line, somebody was negligent with that Venator Star Destroyer by allowing it to head to Braca without being wiped. And even Tech seems surprised that the data was still there. And but what's interesting here is that because the Bad Batch have not been put out of service, they are still soldiers like anyone else. The fact that they're deserters, or at the very least AWOL, doesn't mean that the crimes they commit while still technically in service don't count or couldn't be prosecuted as if they're members of the military. And so as members of the military, or as members of the federal government, or the Galactic Empire, they could face some very stiff penalties. And it's not a complex crime to commit. You have the intent element that you intended to take this information, or take it in a way that you're not authorized to do. And then there's the taking itself. And it's a pretty simple crime to commit with pretty stiff penalties. And in a case like this, I would assume that a former Republic capital ship had just a trove. They're not stealing a folder or two. They're stealing just terabytes upon terabytes of information with the intent to sell this. And so, you've got a potential conspiracy here. You've got a lot of big ticket crimes that you don't even touch the actual weapons that they're talking about stealing.
Agreed. And there's a lot to unpack there. So living in the San Francisco Bay Area off of Vallejo, we have the reserve fleet, the Ghost Fleet. There's only a few of them left that they've been slowly scrapping. And like, we had those in the event we needed to fight World War III and move a bunch of material from point A to point B. It's like, that's what happens with wars. The MIRAD and being able to have sea lift command is an important ability. But that's changed. And so we would just put ships there that we didn't need anymore, but we're just saving for just in case. And we've been scrapping those. And this would be like getting on one of those, even if it's decades out of service, there could still be classified information on it. In the 80s, my grandfather was helping restore a B-17 at the Yankee Air Force in Michigan. And they tried getting B-17 plans, and they were still classified in 1986. But because of his position that he had within the company, he made a phone call, and mysteriously a package arrived with no return address that had the plans for B-17 that arrived. So again, like, we take that stuff seriously, and yes, they did restore it, and it flies, and it's a beautiful thing. But this is up there with that. Just because it's old doesn't mean that it doesn't have sensitive material on it. Like those, cannons on the gun deck, like, they still work, and others might want to have that information on how to build something similar. So, go ahead.
Well, in the private sector, my day job is a privacy officer in healthcare, and people are under the mistaken belief that HIPAA doesn't apply to dead people. But even if the record is less than 50 years old, it's still protected. And it doesn't matter when the record was made. If it's protected health information, it's protected health information. And, I look at all of this from the lens of a privacy officer, and I have vendors that I contract with to dispose of hardware, to dispose of the bane of my existence are the shredders. And I kind of look at the Scrappers Guild similar to a shredding vendor, where, I have had situations where a bag fell off a truck. And trying to recover that. And I've literally been on my hands and knees hunting down PHI on the street because of the risk involved. That's kind of the lens with which I look at all of this, of the disposal of information that needs to be destroyed. Sometimes you do contract it out, and you have to trust your vendors and have to have some very stiff penalties in place if they screw it up somehow. That's where I look at it is that, whoever negotiated the Scrappers Guild contract is sweating hard at a breach like this, because I see this as an information breach.
Okay. And I would agree with that.
And every single person has to worry about that. It's not just the military, but it's everybody.
Like when Bono had a laptop go missing with songs that they were writing for, I don't remember which album, but that there are executives who lose laptops full of pie, and it makes the news because the laptop might have, oh, look, just 100,000 people's information on it. It's like, yeah. Thanks. Take care of that stuff.
Yep.
We were, my 100-year-old grandfather, we're getting ready to move him in with my aunt and uncle. And my aunt said, yeah, I'm just going to take his computer to e-waste. I said, no, you're not. No, it's like, we're going to wipe that bad boy first before that goes anywhere. So no. But yeah, the data, they must have either been lazy or just crashed the thing on the planet and said, we're done. War's over, time to go. And
it's your problem now.
Yeah, maybe the data deletion protocol was just scrapping the ship, which seems like not a good plan. It'd be like looking at the ships that were used in the Bikini Atoll test, and maybe classified information still on board that they didn't clean it out before setting off Able or Baker. Pivoting to the other side with the arms dealing, Steve, could we get your thoughts on, turning that ship into a giant Costco of weapons? Let's take this and then we're going to sell it. Thoughts on that as somebody would be concerned about that?
Yeah. So stealing, selling sensitive government property is typically problematic unless you go through official channels. And I think it's very clear here that Hunter is not contemplating going through official channels. He's actually learning. I have to applaud him. He's learning the game pretty quickly about how to survive outside of the military system. And he realizes that in order to pay off their debt, they need to make a big score. And he's learned that information is power, far more than armaments. So if they can get some of this information, and it looks like Tech was able to get some information, at least. We don't know how much yet. But there may be some useful information there that may fuel some, the plots of some future episodes. So Hunter is starting to learn the game. He's not going to be able to turn this Venator Star Destroyer into the Costco of arms dealing. Certainly not legally, and just on a practical level too. If he tried to do that, he would have a lot of other people coming to challenge him as the king of the mountain here. And if he were, probably the smartest and safest play is to grab what they can and just get out of Dodge, because they've got to deal with the Scrappers so long as they're there. The Scrappers can alert the Empire and any other bounty hunters or any others. Scrappers or other people who are hunting for these type of things. And this is some sensitive information. The government's going to want some of this stuff back too. we already know the Empire has other reasons for pursuing them, but if they did not have any reasons for pursuing them previously, if Hunter and the rest were just living off the grid and were not wanted, this would place them on the grid, stealing some of these items, particularly the information. This would put them on the grid. And these, it should not surprise anyone that these are the types of crimes that are taken very, very seriously by the government. The United States Attorney's Office will prosecute people, certainly for theft of government property, for theft of sensitive property, and there's some very, very serious charges involved here. So Hunter would do well. I mean, he's already outside the law anyways, but he would do well to take what they can and get out of there as quickly as possible.
I am surprised they waited so long. So it was like dark and overcast, and now it's daylight. So I'm surprised as soon as the procedures weren't done, they just didn't do a smash and grab and get out of there. So time passed for the troops from Kamino to arrive at the planet.
They probably should have left with Rex, or right around that time if they could have.
Yeah, I'm actually stunned that they made that tactical error of like, we'll just hang out. And that actually, I don't know if that was them being overly complacent, but I'm surprised that they just didn't, we got what we needed and we're leaving. And oh, by the way, we're gonna go by the hangar deck and grab some cool stuff and then get out of here. Or tech after a surgery, I'm gonna go up to the bridge and grab some data and then we can leave. So that actually surprised me from a storytelling perspective.
I have to comment really quick too, just on the medical side. These guys have undergone invasive brain surgery to remove chips, and they're running around like with reckless abandon, blasting and dodging fire. I'm thinking this is not at all realistic. Having dealt with many brain surgery cases, and several friends are brain surgeons, and that's not, I mean, these clones must have remarkable healing skills. Rex
was on his feet pretty quickly as well. So maybe it's not that bad of, if they just turn off the chip or are they removing it. I think from the scars that they had, unless Hunter's is under his bandana, the chips were actually removed, but they seem to be, is this just like freezing a mole off? It's like a skin tab or a pimple. We'll just, we'll lance it and we'll be done. Or is this something way more like in tune with a endoscopy or something?
One heck of an auto surgeon.
Yeah.
In that med bay.
You
wonder why they went to Braca. You gotta have the one on the Star Destroyer. You can't trust this to a living being. We'll be out for days.
Yeah, good catch. Very good catch, Steve. So let's talk to the issue that starts at the beginning on Kamino with, I have such a hard time with the cloners' names. Was it Nana Sam? Thomas, you're the award-winning.
Nala Se is their chief medical officer,
and who's
if that's who you're referring to. That's Lama Su.
That's going to confuse me for the rest of my life. Helpful if they didn't rhyme. They're the ones hiring the bounty hunters. And we have the issue of recovering Omega. Now, the first part of this is we see Cad Bane, and we have the shootout between Hunter and Cad Bane. There are two ways to look at this. I think self-defense or a duel. Christina, you raised the dueling issue. Can you share your analysis of that?
Aside from possibly on an island that has no law or Uruguay, dueling is illegal pretty much everywhere in the world. It used to be a thing, and it is no longer And so you can't say that somebody dishonored you or somebody challenged you and, take pistols at dawn, which this is what it looked like. I mean, they definitely went with shootout in the Old West. And at one point, and I don't remember the year, I think it was the 1860s, there was discussion of a constitutional amendment to ban duels because it was a thing. And we decided as a people that we don't like that thing. So several states have it in their constitution, thou shalt not duel. So dueling is not just because your honor has been brought into question. The solution to that, at least a duel to the death. I mean, if you want to have like a dance off or something like that, I think that's still okay. But a duel to the death is not the route that one can take for a situation like that.
Yeah,
Oh, and I wanted to mention one more thing.
Yeah.
Prior to this episode had one of my favorite one-liners in all of Star Wars, which was when Omega was talking about how she had never been inside an ion engine before.
Oh, yeah.
And Wrecker said, it'd be weird if you had.
That was great.
So my husband and I had to stop the episode because we were laughing so hard at that line. And
That was
we were
awesome.
we were mildly surprised that it wasn't like all over the internet. It was up there with there are no guardrails here, in my opinion, and funniest things that I've heard in Star Wars.
Yeah,
So anyhow, going forward.
good catch. And yes, absolutely. Or Wrecker saying, I don't even know what that means. Just say exit. It's our way out.
Yeah.
The guy who aced the SAT vocab test versus the guy who, writes with a crown. So yeah, it's there's a lot to unpack, but good catch. Yeah, I remember an article from the Navy history group that I follow, that when the Navy outlawed dueling because they were getting tired of officers killing each other, or members of Congress deciding to go have a shootout. And, one of the more interesting ones was when it was Senator Toombs, and this is before the Civil War, challenged Senator Ben Wade to a duel. And the way that dueling rules worked was that the guy got challenged could pick the terms of the duel, so the weapon and the paces and who had the first shot. And Senator Wade said, yeah, with turkey rifles at 10 paces, I get the first shot. So Wade could have been blindfolded and would have killed Toombs because most, and Toombs are like, you're a gentleman, and, declined the invitation at that point. But yeah, we generally don't want that to be happening. Bad mojo.
But I really like Christina's idea of dance-offs to the death. I could totally get behind that. I'm thinking Wrecker would probably be the best dancer. I think that they would totally defeat Crosshair. I'm thinking Crosshair does not have many moves.
Yeah, there's
He's
no way.
probably limited
Crosshair
to
can do the
cabbage patch
robot
or
at the
something.
Yeah,
most.
he
Yeah,
had
maybe the
no-
mashed potato. I don't know, but I'm thinking Wrecker could get down, pull out a piece of cardboard and just start doing some breakdancing, like break into Electric Boogaloo, something like that.
It could make motion practice more interesting.
Oh yeah.
But yes, good call. Very good call. Looking forward, so we have bounty hunters in play. And I do think defense of others is a legitimate reason for Hunter to have, a face-off with Cad Bane. I think that takes it out of the dueling category and puts it into defense of others, since Bane wanted Omega, and keeping someone from getting kidnapped, that falls under the defense of others statute, especially a kid. It's like, oh, you want to take the little girl over my dead body? So that's an absolute legitimate. Most courts will go, yeah, we're down with that. Thank you. But the reason that Bane is out hunting Omega is because he's being paid by, the Cameroonian. Oh God, Cameroonians? Thomas, what's the plural?
Say it 10 times fast, and then I'll tell you what it is. Here closes the Kaminoans. It's Sunday night.
Oh, and I'm
It's
tired.
excused.
So that raises some interesting issues, and I'll frame the issues, and those can jump in accordingly. Issue one is if the Kaminoans are the legal guardian of Omega, is it within their right to send a bounty hunter to go after her, or is she viewed as their property, which means a human being is being viewed as property, which that makes it sound more like the fugitive slave laws and sending out bounty hunters to go capture human beings to put them back into enslavement, which is written into the Constitution. And we had 2 fugitive slave laws that were passed. The more egregious one passed was part of the Compromise of 1850, which allowed, which put the Civil War on fast forward. Just as a point of reference, you only had to be 1/32nd African to be considered a slave. So after Dred Scott, about 1857, there were slave auctions with white people. And you had Northerners looking at what was happening going, so their slave hunters go north and drag people back. They can start doing that with white people now. I mean, there's a reason why Lincoln won, because this was an abomination. And this abomination is treating people as property. And is Omega being treated as property, or is she being treated as a child? And the parental guardians want her back. Who wants to take a swing at this?
I will say, if you've given the nature of this assignment, this mission, if you didn't think it was going to be Cad Bane, who was it going to be that would take a mission to go snag a kid and bring said kid back to the cloners beyond the Outer Rim? So he seems tailor-made for this sort of awfulness. But I was glad to see him.
Yeah. I'll jump in and say, like, the way you frame the issue, Josh, there are 2 paths, but I think they end up getting us to the same place. And one path I think is a little more palatable. That is, if Omega is considered the charge, or the subject of the legal guardianship, to the Kaminoans. We know she was a medical assistant, at least. The Kaminoans appeared to be her legal guardians. So if she is taken away, they arguably have the right to try to get her back. And they're resorting to force here with the hiring of a bounty hunter. Whether we're comfortable with that or not, I mean, certainly we prefer these issues to be hashed out maybe in a court of law rather than blasters, outside of a spaceship. But I think they've got a compelling argument, the Kaminoans, that is, if we go with the more distasteful analysis that clones are property, and it's interesting, Star Wars hasn't done a trial episode on something like that, and maybe it's because if that issue were ever settled, it would have such far-reaching ramifications, regardless of which way they decided, that it would forever affect future stories. But if we consider for a moment the uncomfortable proposition that Omega is property of the Kaminoans, and the Kaminoans are simply trying to retrieve their property, and I'm just kind of speaking for the Kaminoans, or what I would expect that they would say. If she's considered property, then she has very few, if really no, individual rights at that point. So the Kaminoans are very much within their rights to try to reclaim her. Again, it gets us to the same place. Cad Bane is either someone who's just trying to retrieve a person, or he's sort of like a treasure hunter, recovering something that was lost.
Parents don't try to reclaim their kids so they can clone them. And that really takes her out of the parental guardianship, because parents don't use children like that. I mean, this is, even if you're dealing with 19th century, we live on a farm and we need to have 9 kids. because we're going to not expect all of them to make it, and we need the farm labor. Like, that's still not even in the same category. Like, this is, like, they thinking of the children's musical Pete's Dragon, you don't love her, you can't have her, comes to mind, that, like, those aren't parents. They're not even foster parents. Christina?
Well, I got the impression that Nala Se had different motivations than the rest of the Kaminoans when it came to Omega. She helped them escape. She kind of almost encouraged her to join the clone, the Bad Batch. So I think that she would consider herself more of a guardian than an owner of, and she was looking out for the best interest of her child when she made that determination. What she's doing now, I have no idea. But it seems that definitely the Kaminoans in general probably view her more as an asset than they do as an individual. But I got the impression, at least initially, that she was looking at this at this person as a person to whom that she had a responsibility to keep safe. And I think that one of the reasons she was encouraging the retrieval of Omega was because there was a death squad coming for them. She could have easily have been killed by the death squad. So, retrieving her before that happened might have been something that she was in keeping with her idea of keeping her ward safe. With regard to any rights that the clones have, the Bad Batch have towards parental rights, they have possession. They have possession, and they're also relatives. They are related to her. In the Texas consent statute, at least with regard to healthcare, if you can't find a parent to sign off on getting a kid care, you go down a laundry list, and aunts and uncles are very, very high up on the laundry list of people who can consent for kids when you can't find the parents. And from a practical perspective, I also, in addition to being a privacy officer, I work for a healthcare institution. And from a practical perspective, there are a lot of kids out there that don't have any formal paperwork with regard to who is their guardian. I mean, I run into it all the time. Mom has been deported, dad's in jail, grandma has custody, and we're trying to get this kid care. And she never went through any court. She never went through any sort of, there's no documentation. But because of the relationship and because of the actual custody of the kid and the circumstances around them, I have no problem whatsoever with a ton of documentation in the medical record of saying, go ahead and treat this kid with the grandma being the one to give consent, even though, no court has gone and said grandma is the one that can consent for the kid. So, I mean, I think the Bad Batch having as much of a claim of custody over her, especially given the familial relationship, is as strong, if not stronger, than somebody who made her. But again, we don't know enough about the relationship with what's her name? Not Dunwee, Nala Se. Sorry, now you got me confused.
That brings up a good point, because Omega would have a voice in all of this, presumably at any sort of hearing like this. They're going to hear from her and what she has to say. And quite frankly, Nala Se does not have a great history when it comes to caring for those that the Kaminoans have treated. If you go back to the end of the Clone Wars show, in the Lost set of episodes, you have the clone trooper Tup, who sort of kicks off this entire revelation that these chips exist. And Fives is there escorting her, him very famously, and there's a discussion about what to do, and she quite frankly doesn't care what happens to him. She's not interested in doing anything that's really in his best interests. She's just really, really cold and calculating during that entire episode arc, and it sort of pulled back the veil on the Kaminoans. And I think at its core, Omega to Tonway, and Nala Se and the rest of them is a cash cow. That's the next Omega, and the technology and the sort of groundbreaking cloning tech that she surely represents is their way to stay relevant in the galaxy, because they need the new innovative product. Their clones were cutting edge at the time, but the war's over. Now they've got to have something to keep ahead of the competition, so to speak, and that's Omega. I think they almost, I want to say somebody speaks of her as the contingency or something like that. There's a word sort of subtly dropped there as the Kaminoans talk about hiring a bounty hunter, and the Bad Batch doesn't matter to them. As skilled and as talented as those troops are, they don't care. They care about her, and it's not because Tipoca City is this warm, inviting place, that this home where she belongs. And I think if you got Omega on the stand, while she might not testify to any kind of abuse or neglect at the hands of the Kaminoans, I think she would offer some really compelling testimony about the new family that she's found. I think that's a fascinating point, Christina, about the fact that they are literal copies of each other. She, not a direct copy necessarily, but very, very much related to the entire Bad Batch. And I think that, combined with the fact that they have acted at every step as her family, cared for her, those are going to come through most powerfully in her words under oath. And it would make it a really tough choice to send her back to this cold, sterile environment on Kamino there.
I'll throw out one question for the group here. When Cad Bane and Hunter face off, did anyone actually think Hunter was going to win that one?
But I thought he would have done better.
Yeah, it would. My heart sank when he took the shot to the chest.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling my boys, Hunter's going to lose. And they're like, no, Dad, no, oh, no. And I said, well, I mean, he has to, because if he wins, that story's over. And my 12-year-old calls this plot armor. So, yeah, Cad Bane had plot armor. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Indubitably deed.
I will say he is too good a character to leave on the shelf. So seeing him back in the mix, he would be at the top of my list for characters to see in a live show. So I was really, really happy to see him back in action.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in any of the upcoming live shows that make temporal sense.
Yeah.
So Kenobi, Andor, maybe let's see now, Rogue Squadron.
Depends on that set. Yeah.
So we can dream.
Steve, that's a Black Series action figure that's just chef's kiss. The Cad Bane that they released, the 6 inches,
yes,
one of the best out there.
Yeah,
I don't have that one, but I'm probably gonna have to track them all. My boys love the Clone Wars, so there's a diorama here set up on the desk. It's kind of hard for me to turn the computer around to show you, but for completing the school year, my son did get, my 9-year-old got Echo,
Very
Clone
nice.
Trooper Echo.
Oh wow! Is that was that the Target one?
Yeah.
Somebody in my household went to at least 6 Targets looking for that and was
I
failed
have
at it.
not.
He shall
I
not
have
be
not
named.
found it. A friend of mine found it, so I was able to get it from my friend. But
Very
yeah, we love them. But and then of course the Bad Batch figures. These guys are awesome.
I pre-ordered those from Big Bad Toys.
Yeah.
And, they're not yet in my loot bin, so waiting and looking for.
They're awesome.
Just as we close things out, the showdown with Crosshair. He does take an ion engine to the face. The helmet does come off. Again, predictions are dangerous. I wouldn't be surprised if Omega and Crosshair save each other.
Huh.
Because breaking into the research facility is hard. but if his chip gets turned off from his injuries, he might realize, what have I done? I've killed civilians. I ordered a kid to get shot, and he could be the one to break her out. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, or if she gets his chip deactivated somehow. But that's just because I don't think they're going to do a Mandalorian style rescue. I think it's going to be an escape, but I've been wrong before. And I listened to another podcast where the guy the host went off on his fan fiction, fan canon, and I think that's just super dangerous, but I wouldn't be surprised.
That was not coincidence that he happened to take the brunt of that engine blast, and it sort of focused on him getting picked back up. And at some point, he's going to realize that he's training his replacements, the folks that are going to render him obsolete. And I think there's going to be a certain amount of contempt for what the Empire has done to him. And what you've seen at least a couple times in this series so far is they have to, I'll call it Winter Soldier him. They have to put him under that device and just really zap him to keep him super compliant. And what happens when that doesn't work anymore?
Yeah. Was he blinded? Like my first thought was, oh, maybe he's blinded. So now his, supervision, the one huge feature he had, is impaired. I don't think he's blinded, but maybe his vision may be hurt now. Like maybe he's more normal. It would be an interesting twist, I think.
It's possible.
It did seem like a tactically bad place to be standing. Even
not a great Overwatch position.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that standing behind an ion engine when it turns on is just the wisest of moves. But it also shows that he was pretty impassioned and not really thinking straight. He was thinking more emotionally, even though he doesn't think he is.
Right.
Yeah, that was not smart. But again, they've cranked up his chip to be obsessed with getting Clone Force 99. So I could see poor decision making because of that. But yeah, if his eyesight's damaged, and I've heard others speculate about that already. But again, maybe he gets in a bacta tank and all is well. So I don't know. But
as I get older, I really want it bacta tank.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that bacta tank looks like a nice little jacuzzi, right? You go in, relax, come out, and you're good, right?
Have my hip kind of, yeah.
My knee hurts. That does sound super awesome.
Yeah.
Dunk me. Let's go.
Tell me more. Where is this? How much is it? Yeah. Totally interested in this. So lots of good stuff. So anyway, those are just, I don't want to use the word prediction, but guesses that just storytelling options. Or, we see Fennec intercept Cad Bane to get Omega. There could be something weird as well. So, but we're at the midpoint, and I wouldn't, they're not going to repeat the storytelling style of Mandalorian. So they'll do something different.
When are we going to find out Omega's power, though? Is it going to be the last episode or second?
It's going to be at the end.
Yeah, it's going to be at the end, I think, right?
Yeah, I still stand by. I think she's the clone of a Jedi. I don't know which one, but I think she's the clone of a Jedi, and I would put it on a High Republic one. But
oh yeah,
I like it
because that's
Avarice. Yeah, that's actually a really good idea.
It connects dots, but again,
hey, want to know more? Go buy these books.
Exactly.
I had to finish all the series I was reading so that before the new High Republic books come out.
So, but we'll find out. And whatever it is, we're all going to be here and ecstatic to have good Star Wars on a weekly basis. And what more can you want? I mean, like it sounds, Thomas and Steve, it sounds like Steve, you definitely watch with your kids.
Oh yeah.
Your girls appreciate it yet. So
Not quite. This is still daddy's thing, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. Let me have one thing for now.
it's like you double fist eating cake. I want my ass.
This is my time.
Oh my. Well, this was again a good Father's Day weekend for folks to be able to enjoy this. Absolutely. So with that, everyone, thank you for watching or listening. If you caught us live or on our podcast channel, thank you. Christina, thank you for joining us this week.
Great to meet you officially or virtually.
Thank you,
Thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
Outstanding. Well, again, it's nice for lawyers to get together and talk Star Wars because that's what, who knew all these kids who spent time reading would grow up and be lawyers? So with that, everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and stay geeky. Thank you.